Alright, we have two very different adventure games for a double review today. First, The Case of the Golden Idol, a game that lets you channel your inner Columbo, and then Brok the Investigator, a point-and-click adventure game where you can solve puzzles by using critical thinking or just shurikening your way around. We're going to be starting with The Case of the Golden Idol, and I'm going to be using still images as this is a very spoiler-heavy style puzzle game. So, The Case of the Golden Idol involves, well, the titular Golden Idol, that after being uncovered seems to have a trail of death and mysterious circumstances surrounding it. Each chapter is a vignette where someone has been murdered, and it has something to do with the idol. Your job is to figure out the who's, the what's, the where's, the why's, and the how's of what happened in this vignette. By clicking on various things, you'll get different adjectives and verbs, which you can then put into the UI to try and figure out what exactly happened. Each chapter will have different things for you to fill out based on the circumstances at hand, and this is definitely a very heavy critical thinking based adventure game. For those of you who played Return of the Obra Dinn, you should be very well acquainted with this kind of design. In one respect, it is a little bit easier than Obra Dinn by the fact that each chapter is compartmentalized. You're not going to have words or things from chapter 2 having to be involved in chapter 3, 4, and so on. However, it is still a very challenging game. There is a hint system that the game strongly suggests you to avoid. But the challenge here is that you're going to have to do a lot of connecting the dots between the clues that you see and the clues that you find and what's going on in the game. And this game is not above having red herrings in each scene, although I don't know if communism ever shows up. My main issue with The Case of the Golden Idol is that much like Obra Dinn, it is one of those games that when you get stuck and you're forced to use the hint system or look things up, it's going to be, I think, very demoralizing to keep playing. And the complexity of each case only grows from episode to episode. And it could be a little bit annoying sometimes just trying to figure out what it is that the game is trying to tell you based on the clues at hand. And you're going to have to look at all the different aspects, not just what you find on notes, but also what characters, how they respond. And again, this is one of those games where you will either find this to be very easy to play, or you are going to get stumped like nobody's business. If you love very investigation style games, I'm surprised you don't see more of these in the mainstream side, then definitely check out The Case of the Golden Idol. But if you try out the demo and you just find it a little too complicated for you, then the rest of the game is only going to compound things. With that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a look at game number 2. If you're interested in my thoughts on design, then check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. With Brok the Investigator, this is a self-described, quote-unquote, punch-and-click adventure game. We play as Brok, an alligator detective in a world that I guess is like a dystopian zootopia. Haunted by memories of a lost loved one and trying to make ends meet, he goes on cases. And of course, he's going to stumble across something big that only him and his friends and his fists can solve. So what separates Brok from a lot of the other adventure games is that the game has, well, two distinct ways of playing. You can approach this game as a point-and-click adventure game where you will investigate hotspots, solve various logic-based puzzles, and combine items with everything around the environment and try and figure things out. Or you can start punching, uppercutting, and jump kicking your way through enemies and puzzles. Yes, this is the only adventure game where you can solve a puzzle by uppercutting the door or punching it down. Which in of itself I think is a great tagline for a game like this. So the game kind of has this dual personality of swapping between a point-and-click adventure and then a kind of Streets of Rage light style design. And there's a lot of ambitious gameplay in this title, as there are multiple routes, multiple endings, and how you approach things can greatly differ. Most puzzles will have both a kind of adventure style solution where you'll combine items, search for things, etc., and a more action or fighting based solution where you will attack enemies or just use brute force, well, literally use brute force, to solve some of these cases. And there is certainly a lot going on in this game, but it does create a very challenging way of reviewing it, because this is a game that is one part adventure, one part beat 'em up. And is this a best of both worlds scenario or more of a jack of all trades? So when it comes to the adventure game design, I would kind of put this in the 90s era. Not as complicated as, say, a Maniac Mansion or a Grim Fandango, but still more on the complicated side for its puzzle solutions and puzzle logic. Now, you can get hints using collectible ad labels that you find that one will give you a basic hint, and the second one just flat out tells you, which does solve some of the issues. But this still is one of those adventure games where an item that you didn't pay attention to 10 scenes ago could be used by someone now, which will then be a solution to a puzzle 4 scenes later. And if you miss one of those clues or you weren't paying attention, it can become very frustrating trying to fumble your way around and trying to figure out what is going on. From a beat 'em up standpoint, the game, again, has comparisons to the Streets of Rage, and Brok handles very nicely as a beat 'em up. He moves very responsively, combat has like that nice meatiness to the punches and uppercuts. However, as you play and you start fighting advanced enemies, one of the issues, I don't know if this is on the lower fight difficulties, I was playing this on the highest one, is that enemies and Brok themselves, they don't have, or a lot of them do not have, an actual wind up or start of an attack animation. They will go from neutral to hit instantaneously. What that means is that it becomes very difficult to block or counter enemies when the second they get within punch range, they can just immediately hit you and there's no recourse around it. If you're hoping for any kind of beat 'em up progression, unlocking new powers, changing how you fight across the game, Brok does not do that. When you level up, you can raise your special meter, health, or general punching, but I do not believe that you're going to unlock special powers or new stuff. But this is a game that has multiple chapters and, as I said, multiple endings, so there is a chance that things will evolve as you get further in. For me, this is a tough game to kind of review in terms of whether or not I enjoyed it or not. You have to kind of be interested both in the adventure side and the beat 'em up side. You really want to get the full element out of Brok. Now, the game does promote that you can ignore one or the other if you so choose, but certain sections will obviously be harder or easier depending on the solution that you go. And for fans of either genre, this is certainly an interesting game in terms of whether or not you're going to enjoy this. If you're someone who's looking for a bit more action in their adventure games, or someone who wants to do a little bit more puzzling as well as punching in their beat 'em ups, I highly recommend this game. And if you are someone who's looking for like interesting takes on design or something you haven't seen before, then I would also recommend this game to you, as there really isn't anything else like Brok out there. So with that said, we're going to wrap up this review here. I'd like to thank both games for press keys. If you'd like to submit a game for a future piece, please reach out. Do the liking, subscribing, and commenting. Check out our Discord and Patreon link down below. And come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where it's in the art and science of games.